Okay, so we'll start with the 2011 A-level paper. So we're starting unit number 2 and 3. So certain questions I'll go a little bit in detail. Certain questions are kind of easy. So those questions I might not go very much in detail. Okay. Okay. So I want all of you all to give me answers, guys. The more answers I get, I know how much I need to explain. Okay. So question number 10, 2011 A-levels, question number 10, meaning question number 1 to 9 was from unit number 1. Okay. So a shift of the demand curve for a product to the right could be caused by. Yes. Can you quickly tell me a rightward shift? Is it an increase in demand or a decrease in demand? What's happening? Demand now. This is a very basic thing. The demand curve shifting to the right. Is it an increase or a decrease? It's an increase in the demand. So we are looking at the demand curve, which was like this, is now moving over to here. Okay, that's what you call an increase in demand. So can you tell me which of this would cause? Let's go one by one, since it's the first class still. Okay, what happens if the price of substitute falls? Let's say the price of a substitute falls. Okay, let's say there are two A-level econ teachers. Both are charging 2,500 a month. Let's say the other teacher, not me, the other teacher decreased their class fee to, let's say 1,500 rupees. What will happen to my demand if the price of the substitute falls? The other teacher has now decreased their class fee. So what happens to my demand, guys? If the substitute becomes cheaper, maybe most of my students would now end up going to the other teacher. No, if the both of them are teaching the same thing, tute is also the same, what happens? They would move into someone else. So if the price of the substitute falls, what happens? The demand for the substitute will go up, and as a result, what happens? Demand for the concerned good decreases. Why does it decrease? Because consumers switch to the cheaper substitute. Is that part clear, guys? If the substitute product becomes cheaper, everyone would go and buy that. So everyone is buying. That means the demand for your good will decrease. That means it's a leftward shift, not a rightward shift. We are looking at a rightward shift. So that can't be our answer. We look at the second one. The second one, a fall in the price of the good. Yes, a fall in the price of the good will increase the quantity demanded. But will it increase the demand? Will it shift the curve rightwards? If the price of the good falls, what would happen? If the price of the good falls, it's going to be a point movement. Right now, let's say initially the price was, this much. Okay, let's say price was 10 rupees. And now let's say the price fell, to 8, you would move from point A to point B, but the curve will not shift. Yeah. So what is your this thing for point 2? For question 2, it will be a point movement, but the curve will not shift. That is clear. Then can you tell me for the third one? A rise in income. Let's say consumers' income rise. What happens now? Will the demand increase? Now, consumers, let's say earlier you were earning 50,000. Now, Ranil came into power and he gave you increase in your salary. You're getting 100,000. Will demand increase? Yes, right. So when your income increases, now you have more money, you have more purchasing power. So as a result, what do? You end up buying more. So demand increases. So this can be our answer because we are looking for a one that is causing the demand to increase, a rightward shift. We look at the other two answers also. A rise in the price of the complementary good. Okay, please. We'll try to connect to a practical situation. Can you all give me a complementary good for these classes, for online classes? So nominal income, real income increase, chemistry. Yes, increase in nominal income is a shift in demand. What do you think, guys? A complementary good for these classes? Okay, maybe mobile phones and laptops, data. Okay, let's take data. Let's say, now there is a new telecommunication levy that comes into play. Government wants to increase their revenue, right? So government is now coming and putting a tax on all the telecommunication companies. So now what happens? 1 GB of internet is now 1,000 rupees. what will happen to demand for classes? Demand for online classes. The complementary good has now increased, right? Now they are saying 1 GB is 1,000 rupees. What's going to happen? The demand for your good or demand for classes in my example will come down, right? So in this case, what happens? In this case, the demand decreases because when the complementary good price is higher, people would stop buying the complementary. So if people don't buy data or Wi-Fi, then what happens? They can't come to these online classes. Well, demand will go down. And the final one, what do you think? A rise in the cost of production, what would happen to demand, guys? Will it increase or decrease? If the cost of production increases, the demand will. If the cost of production increases, the demand will not change. It doesn't affect demand, it affects supply. Cost of production is not a determinant of demand, right? So maybe if the cost of production increases, it will not affect the demand. You don't care. Now, for example, let's say my tube printing cost and my Zoom cost increased. My cost of production increased to supply this class. Will it affect your demand? No. You all will still come to the class happily. You all will pay the class fee and you all will come. But it might affect my supply. So an increase in the cost of production doesn't affect the demand. It will affect the supply. What happens to supply, guys? If the cost of production increases, supply increases or decreases? Supply decreases, demand is not affected. Okay, so which one is our answer if that is the case? Our answer is the third one. A rise in income will cause a increase in demand. Is that okay, guys? Fine. Now, this is a very common question that you get every single year. They might not ask it directly like this. So every single year, you get a MCQ based on the determinants of demand and supply. So they say, for example, when we do, I'll show you all. Okay, they will say, when this increases, what happens? When this decreases, what happens? What will cause a right word chip? What will cause a left word chip? What is held constant? And they will give you so many questions. At least 1 or 2 MCQs you're gonna get when based on these determinants of demand. But it was like this: cost of production increases, so price increases, so demand decreases. Cost of production increases. Yeah, so cost of production increases, okay, price increases, I agree. But when price increases, demand will not decrease. Quantity demanded will decrease. So it will be a movement along, right? You get it? So if there is a, let's say this was the supply curve, now cost of production increase, so therefore supply decrease. So then the demand will move from this point to this point. The demand curve will not shift, no, guys. Yeah. For the one who had the question. Clear? So remember, a decrease in demand means a shift in the demand curve. Okay. Right. So that's question number 10. Done. We'll go into question number 11. Very easy question. Which of the following is not held constant when a demand curve is drawn? Easy one, based on law of demand. What is not held constant? Everything is constant, but in the demand curve, one of these can change. Which one is that? What can change? So in the demand curve, this is the price axis, this is the quantity axis. So which one is not held constant? The one that is not held constant is the price of the good. So in the demand curve is drawn to represent the law of demand. So law of demand is saying there's a negative relationship between price and QD. So when the price changes, we can show that. But that's why we said the price is not held constant. Price can change. But whenever something else changes, then we have to draw a completely new demand curve. We'll have to either shift to the right and draw a new one. We'll have to shift to the left and draw a new one. So other factors are held constant while the price is allowed to change. Is that okay, guys? The basics of law of demand. So what is not held constant is the price. All other factors, consumer income, price of substitutes, price of complementary, right? Let's say consumer taste and preferences, all of that is held constant. But the price of the good, that can change. Okay? Right. Then we'll go to the next one. This one was a very interesting question. Okay, we'll see how many of you all have the capacity to think. Okay. So listen very carefully. This is an interesting one, which I will take some time. The demand for a particular normal good is inversely related to price, while its supply is positively related to price. They are saying demand curve is downward sloping, supply curve is upward sloping, positive and negative relationship. During a given time period, 5,000 units are sold at the price of 50 a unit. Okay, so during some given time, 5,000 units were sold at 50 rupees. That means the market was at equilibrium at this point. Do you all agree with me there? Supply curve is upward sloping, demand curve downward sloping. I draw a small equilibrium point and say at price 50, earlier people bought 5,000 units. That's the first half of the question. Then they are saying during a later period, right? Later period, that's sometime later, 8,000 units are sold at a price of 60. Which of the following could account for this change? Now let's try to mark this, right? The easy way to do this is to mark 8,060 in your diagram. Let's try to mark. Now 5,000 is over here. So therefore 8,000 should be somewhere around here, right? 8,000 is somewhere around here. Okay, in this range. 60, now this is 50, 60 should be somewhere around here. Okay, so ideally, this is the point, right? Do you all agree with me there? This is where the price is 60 and the quantity is 800. So price is 60 and the quantity is 8,000. So now we'll think, how did you go from, okay, how can you go from this point of equilibrium to this point, guys? Okay, just think, tell me one thing. What should happen to the demand curve if you want to go to equilibrium to that point? Should the demand shift to the right or shift to the left? Or in other words, increase or decrease? What should happen to the demand? Think. If you are to go from this, I'll change the colors. If you are to go from initial equilibrium is pink, you want to go to the blue equilibrium. What has to happen to demand? Demand has to increase, right? So how can we show that? A rightward shift. Okay, so demand has to increase. Okay. Okay, demand has to increase. Now this is the equilibrium. What do you think should happen to supply? Now demand has to increase, then only you can go at that point. Now for you to have equilibrium, both the curves have to intersect. So right now it is intersecting somewhere higher. For it to intersect over here, what should happen? The supply should shift to the right, no? Supply should also increase. See, if the supply also shifts to the right, the demand also shifts to the right, then you can come into equilibrium at this point. What is this point? 60 and 8,000. How did I take 60 and 8,000? Because they are giving it that in the question. They are saying initial equilibrium is 5,050. Later, after some time, now it is 8,060. And they are asking what could have caused this change. Is that part clear, guys? How I figured it out from the diagram, that the demand has to increase and the supply also has to increase. Only then you can come to that point. Still, this is not the answer. Okay, so we came into an agreement and we realized, okay, for this to happen, the demand and supply both has to increase. So for those who are a little bit weak in this, guys, take some time, go through this again. I'll upload this on YouTube also. So go through this again and see one little by little, have a look. So now can you go through the answers and tell me which of these answers talks about, right, maybe a increase in the demand and maybe a decrease in the, increase in the demand and supply. Which one of the following could account? There is no complete answer, no? 5,000 became 8,000. So demand has to increase. Okay, we'll go one by one. Okay, increase in the price of a complement. Yes, if there is an increase in the price of a complement, what is going to happen to demand? what's going to happen to demand? If the complement price increase, we discussed this before now. Remember, complement was like Wi-Fi for our class. So if the complement becomes expensive, demand for your good will go down. So can that be an answer then? Because we are looking at an answer that says demand and supply to increase, right? So first one can't be. Increase in the price of a substitute. Can this be an answer? If the substitute price increase, demand will increase, no? Now, if let's say another class teacher is charging 5,000 rupees a class, then many people might come to my class. So demand increase. Now here they are not talking too much about the supply, but it's like half correct. Now remember, you always go with the most correct answer, okay? So sometimes there may be an answer that only talks about the demand. We'll see if there is a more correct answer. If not, we can go with this, okay? So for now, I'll just put a small line here and keep. Third one, imposition of a sales tax. What will happen if there is a sales tax, guys? If there is a sales tax. If there is a sales tax, the supply will decrease, right? So then we can't take that as an answer as well. We are looking at an answer where the supply is increasing. So if you put a sales tax unit number 3, what happens? Supply decreases, not that. Okay. So think of this, an increase in the productivity of inputs. What do you think might happen? If there is an increase in the productivity of inputs, if there is an increase in the productivity of inputs, you can argue to some extent and say the supply will increase actually. You can say, look here, the supply can increase, right? Maybe. So maybe this is also somewhat now half correct. Now we are confused. We have 2 correct answers kind of. And last one, increase in the cost of raw materials. What do you think happens there? If there is an increase in the cost of raw materials, the supply will decrease. Now that is completely wrong, no? Because we are looking at an answer where demand and supply is increasing. Okay. So isn't the point move for the increase in quantity supplied? Yeah, no, we can draw it there also. Correct. Right, good. Okay. So, okay, it depends on, that's exactly what I said, right? So maybe my diagram, my alignment is not the great alignment. Okay. So maybe if you properly draw the diagram, I also didn't realize that. Okay. So if you properly draw the diagram into a proper scale, now I have drawn like a diagram is not in a proper scale, no? So maybe if you draw a diagram on a proper scale, maybe this point actually comes, okay, let me make a change here. Give me a second. Okay. So if you actually draw this diagram, why can't I erase? Hold on. Okay. Okay. Look at this. If you draw this diagram to maybe a proper scale, right? Maybe there can be, we can get an answer where just one of this is changing also. Now see, this is where we have 50 and 5,000. Maybe you call it my diagram, maybe we can increase the 60 a little bit higher, no? This 60 can go a little bit up, no? So maybe it's not really here. Maybe we can take it we can take it a little higher. Okay, this 60 here can be a maybe let's say here, but I don't know, maybe taking to a proper scale. So if that is the case, then 60 and 800 can be over here. Okay, just see, this is why is it important to properly draw this diagram. Now maybe 60 and 800 can be here. So then maybe your supply curve goes like this, right? So maybe if that is the case, we don't really need, okay, drawing this straight supply curve is very hard. Okay, let's say these are our supply curve. So if this is the case, do we need the supply to change? If the 60 and 800 is coming over here, 60 and the 800 is here. See, now drawing it to a proper, very close scale. So then You can say supply is remaining constant also. You can say what can cause this change? This change can be caused by a increase in the demand only. Is that part clear, guys? Just by increasing the demand, I can end up with that. See, that is why, now see, when you don't get 100% correct answer, recheck your answer. Right now, usual case, I just drew it without a scale. No, I just drew, just increased and decreased. But then you realize then there is no proper answer that has a demand and supply both increasing. Now that was a little tricky. So therefore, what did I do? Right, just like some of you all told in the chat box, I went and drew it onto a proper scale and so. So then I realized maybe we can get to this 60 and 800 even without changing the supply. So maybe then you're looking at an answer where the demand has to increase. Is that clear? So if that is the case, I can cut off answer number 4 as well. So which is the only answer that talks about the demand increasing, an increase in the price of a substitute. That will cause it to go to 60 and 8,000. Is that fine? There are similar MCQs like this. I'll show you all when we do it again. Any questions, guys? Increase substitute of the supply. No, increase, when you say increase the price of substitute, we are looking at a consumption substitute. Unless they have specifically told it's a production substitute, you can consider that as a consumption substitute. That is relevant to demand, not supply. Okay, so that's a good MCQ. That's what I told you at the beginning. MCQs like this are tricky ones, guys. The first time that you see it, you might not understand. But then later, when you do another question similar to this, now you know, this is what they are talking about. This is the approach that I have to take. Done. So since there are no questions, I'm moving on. Yes, if you have questions, ask, right? So if there is no, if everyone is okay, I'll move on. Yes, so only demand change. Because there is no answer that talks about both changing. So then if you draw it to a proper scale, you can figure out maybe it is in the supply curve itself, the point, but only the demand is changed. Supply is remaining constant. Okay, right. Question number 13. The price last year demand for a product manufactured by a firm is minus 0.8. If the firm raises the price of the product, its revenue will. How are we going to figure out this? How many of you all know? How many of you all know the relationship between price and total revenue? Sorry, elasticity and total revenue. How many of you all remember that area? The relationship between elasticity and total revenue. Can't remember? Can't remember? No, you can't directly say that it's positive like that. If it's inelastic, what will happen? If it's elastic, what will happen? Okay, so let me take around 5-10 minutes to kind of go through, right? So we'll this is again a question that has been tested so many times in different ways. Okay, so let me I'll end this recording from here. I'll go through the elasticity part and then I'll come back to this question. So on YouTube, there will be 2 parts for the 2011 paper.